Queen Dream, we thank you for that. And I just want to say we're in for a treat. I have a gentleman sitting next to me, the good Reverend Conrad Tillard. Now, a lot of times they say if you want to hide something from a black person, you got to put it in the book, right? You ain't going to get that with him. You know, this gentleman is very learned. You know, he's on his way to getting his doctors. You know, he has his own radio show. You know, I think we was talking about J.R. Smith, and we all know LeBron got the MVP, right, a couple of years. This gentleman actually won, I guess, the parallel the MVP when it comes to being a reverend in Brooklyn. You know, he hails from Brooklyn. He is very spiritually inclined. He doesn't hail from Brooklyn, but he did work in Brooklyn, the Bed-Stuy area.
Giving that pass.
Yeah. Very spiritually inclined, you know, and proficient in various different faiths, too. You know, a lot of people can't say they studied and got down one way, converted, you know. And he's touched Harvard University. He's touched some of the oldest institutions outside of Boston as part of his study. He has ran for office. You know, he has done so much, and he even at one point had the name of the hip-hop, you know, the hip-hop Reverend, which was something. Abyssinia, he was trained, I believe, the good Reverend Calvin Butts, Adam Clayton Powell, Reverend Proctor, that whole lineage of outstanding reverends he comes from. And with that being said, we're going to give him an on-point clap for the man right next to me.
That's Will Jameer Townsend.
Thank you. This brother's got a lot of energy.
Oh my God.
Okay.
This is all day, every day with my brother.
Okay.
So it's a pleasure.
Good morning.
Good morning.
That's great to be here with you guys and this wonderful crew you have here.
Thank you, brother.
Great.
So tell me, I'm going to be a little untraditional with you.
Sure.
In your opinion, what was your favorite year? You've done so many things. You've seen everything from the Million Man. I mean, you've seen some things. What was your favorite year?
That's a great question because I would have to say for me, my greatest year was probably 1984 because that's when I came alive politically. Reverend Jesse Jackson ran for president that year, not the 88 campaign.
Okay.
Okay, that was the PC. That was the PG campaign. But the 84 campaign was important because it, for people in my generation who only read about Dr. King and read about Selma and read about the struggles, read about Malcolm, when Jesse ran for president in 84, it woke a lot of us up. People like Sister Soldier and myself. We were the vanguard of young people coming up in that era because this black man, tall black man from Chicago, who 25 years before we elected a black president, or maybe more, 30 or more years, he ran. And that turned me on and made me know that I was somebody. And then, of course, there are many highs and points after that. But I would say that's probably my greatest year. I didn't have the scars that you will get in the movement eventually.
Right.
I was just turned on at that time, yes.
So in doing the things that you do, how is it that you're able to exhibit this comfort level, whereas you could be in Bed-Stuy, you know, coming out the projects, and then the next meeting you on the halls of Princeton, or you're in Harvard?
You know, it's fun. It's interesting because that's also an excellent question. I'm actually a Harlem guy.
Let's say that
But
again.
let me just say this.
Say that one more time.
But let me say this. I'm one of the few ministers in this city is blessed to have worked both vineyards, Harlem and Bedford-Stuyvesant. And Bedford-Stuyvesant gave me a lot of love, so I consider that home too now. Sure. But it's interesting. I came to New York from Philadelphia in 1980.
Love Philly.
88, 89. From the University of Pennsylvania, worked in the Harlem community, and then went to Harvard Divinity School. So that dichotomy has always been in my life. When I was a student at the University of Pennsylvania, I was on the campus half the time in North Philadelphia and West Philadelphia, the other half of the time engaging young rappers like Cool C and Steady B and the Hilltop Hustlers and that whole group of
PSK.
PSK. And
Schoolie D.
you know,
Philly.
Three
I mean,
times
so-
dope.
so-
Bahama Dia.
Absolutely. So, you know, it's interesting when you know our people. I came up in the black community and the black experience, and so for me, it's just what we do. It's just,
Right.
it's life.
I want to ask you. I'm very interested in how, being a member of the Nation of Islam, right? I just want to know what was it that made you want to join, but then
Okay.
also leave.
Okay.
Because usually a lot of brothers don't really leave. They kind of stay in there,
Right.
they learn, and they live their life in the nation.
Right. Well, the interesting thing about it was Jesse Jackson was the first great voice in my life, but shortly after his campaign, and Yasmin, you will appreciate this, as a 19-year-old, I thought Jesse was going to be president. I mean, that's what we were fighting
Everybody
for.
thought, huh?
We were arguing with the older black civil rights establishment and said he's not going to win. People like Coleman Young, great black leaders, were not backing Jesse. They were going with the Democrat candidates. So when he didn't win, I didn't have this political sagacity. I didn't understand. I was just crestfallen, and I charged racism with a lot of it. But the other great voice that emerged in my life at that time was Minister Louis Farrakhan. And he was such a strong and powerful, unapologetically black
Yes.
voice
Yes.
that when I was crushed with Jesse not becoming president, and largely because of racism, I thought, not knowing the politics, then it made sense. And God bless me. I met the minister as a young person, and he was just a most gracious leader to me. He took me in and taught me a tremendous amount. He sent me to New York City to be the minister. And he appointed me first the National Youth and Student Minister of the Nation of Islam.
And to get Mosque number 7.
And then later
come
to
on.
elevate the mosque number
Come
7.
on, that's the one.
So I count all of that a great blessing.
Right.
And it's true. One of my mentors in life that I was blessed to meet when I got to Harlem was the great Percy Ellis Sutton.
Oh, man.
And he never referred to me as anything other than Mr. Minister. And of course, I was nobody. I mean, this man was a legend, but he had that kind of respect. He gave me a big reputation to try to live up to. And one of the things he told me once after I was on the radio, WLIB, BLS, and when my show ended, he said, you know, Minister, that you go through experiences in life. You'll have many experiences, and count this as one of those experiences in your life. And so to put in context my leaving the Nation of Islam, I say that it's one of the experiences we have in life. Right before I left the nation, I met with Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture, who lived up on Common Avenue at the time. He's now deceased. And I went to Brother Kwame and I said, you know, I don't want to leave the nation, but at this point, I am moving in a different direction. And he said, brother, he said, I started in SNCC. He said, then I became a Panther. And then I went to the All African People's Revolutionary Party. He said, black people don't care where you struggle as long as you continue to struggle.
That's
So
true.
that was
Wow.
And so I left the nation and started in Harlem an organization called a Movement for Change.
Yes.
Everybody had talked about the music of hip hop, the culture, but I said, no, we got to look at the politics of it too.
Yes.
I said, because hands that once scratched turntables will one day pick a president. And at the time, Jesse Ventura was governor in Minnesota. And I said,
right.
now, if he can run for governor in Minnesota, Chuck D can run for Congress in New York. Or Kwame Kilpatrick can go from the state Senate to the mayor's office in Detroit. And again, this was an opportunity to bring together all of my experiences. Jesse's mobilizing the masses, my work in the nation, learning how to get our people at the most base and grassroots level energized and politicized. And I believe, and I claim this, that the work for a movement for change, saying look at the hip hop community as a political demographic, the way we only looked at the baby boomers, the way we looked at the civil rights generation. I said, no, we're beyond culture, we're beyond clothes and music. we're also a political demographic.
But Reverend, on that note,
Yes.
did you ever find that the word hip hop was closing you in or was bringing too much pressure to what you were doing?
I did not. In fact, that title, the hip hop minister, was given to me by Peter Noel. I actually did not like it at the time.
Always happens like
I
that, yeah.
resented it because, see, I was the minister of Mosque number 7 at the time, and like any minister over a congregation, I had very
Oh,
senior members,
course.
people who, for them, Malcolm X was their minister.
Right.
Or Minister Farrakhan was their minister. So I didn't want to be just seen as some little
Right,
hip-hop
hip-hop.
minister.
Yeah. And that's what I was feeling when I made
Right.
that. Yeah.
So in that regard, you're right. But a good friend of mine, very dear friend of mine, said to me, "No. You have to embrace this because you're lucky to be doing this at this time." Of course, we know that time now is the golden age of hip hop.
Right.
So I embraced it, and I believe that work we did here in Harlem, registering tens of thousands of young people to vote. I traveled across the country talking about the gospel of the hip-hop political movement, ultimately led to the election of Barack Obama. Now, this is a story that hasn't been told yet.
You shared it now.
I'm the one that went to Russell Simmons and got him involved in politics.
Interesting.
And Puffy. And when they started talking about vote and die, I had met with
Interesting.
them and laid this whole thing out.
Worked with
and
Shine.
incidentally, the greatest beef in hip hop is actually between me and Russell Simmons.
Wow.
That's the greatest. That's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Dr.
One
Chavis,
that has not
Dr.
yet
Chavis
been
came in and
examined.
started, yeah.
Gotcha. So,
So
I
no,
like
we
that.
were. You like beef?
I like that beat.
That's funny. So, in the spirit of also continuing uplifting our communities and stuff like that, when you decided to move in the path of ministry, despite with whatever congregation, you seem to continue on with this.
Yes.
You could probably be doing a lot of other things. You
Yes.
could probably
Yes.
be running for office.
Absolutely.
You could probably be running, be ahead of I guess a corporate company.
Yes.
But you've continued on with this struggle, if you will.
Yes.
We talk about a lot how the religious community is not reaching the people on the ground. You find a lot of people sensationalizing religion, but not necessarily creating that path.
Right.
What are you doing differently at this point?
Well, I've always been a local parish minister. I mean, that's just basically what I do. When I served in Harlem, I was ever present in the community. You might see me on TV, but you'd see me on the corner of 127th Street and Lenox Avenue, go to all the community meetings. In Bedford-Stuyvesant, I was on the board at Boys and Girls High School and at the games and at the meetings, and I've been a PTA president. I mean, I basically define ministry as being a local parish minister. That whatever community you serve in, you should be present in that community. I'm not interested in TV. I'm not interested in all of that. Sometimes that comes, sometimes that doesn't. But at the end of the day, what I'm trained to do and what my calling is to be in the community and try to help uplift our folks to get them to be the best that they can be. There's a lot of hurt in
Right.
this world. There are a lot of people who are anesthetizing their pain in social media and material things and the pursuit of them, which often doesn't lead to them. But that doesn't stop people from giving their lives try. So I think for me, the greatest thing for me is to try to help somebody. And that's what my calling is. And at various points in my career, I've done it in different ways. But I've always tried, whenever I had a microphone, whenever I had some sort of platform, to try to speak life and positivity and upliftment to my people. Because I think that's what's most important. And at the end of the day, that's really all that really matters.
well said. Well said.
Yeah, I was, me growing up in Queens. I grew up in the
Sorry, hear that.
just
Well, you got Queen's backup coming, so just be
Yeah.
strong.
There you
You
go.
got Queen's backup coming. Don't worry about it. Yeah, you got backup.
what do you feel are some of the challenges of the Afro-American community when it comes to bringing them a better quality of life. Like, what are some of the challenges that you have faced in Brooklyn, Bronx, Harlem, that you can explain to us?
Well, the greatest challenge that I've seen in my ministry,
Right.
you see, I remember the period when hip hop was largely a community-based phenomenon. You know, Bambaataa and
Right.
people like B.O. His brother, he's deceased now. He's a wonderful brother, was the head of the Shaka Zulu security of the Zulu nations. He was killed in Castle Hill in a laundromat. And, you know, Showbiz was arrested for that, but later they believe someone else did it. But I remember hip hop, you know, when it was authentic, and the brothers were using it to try to elevate and get out of a life of death and destruction. The biggest challenge, I think, for our people today is that as hip hop is the most prominent and most influential vehicle, it's more influential than parents.
Right.
It's more influential than religion. It's more influential than education today. But what has happened is when the music industry took over this phenomenon, I remember sitting in my office on 126th Street and 5th Avenue. This was about 1992 or 93. And at that time, many of the New York rappers believed this California rap stuff, it ain't going nowhere.
Right. Don't fade.
I saw 3 young girls, had to be 10 or 11 years old. They were locked arm in arm, coming down 5th Avenue. I'm looking out my window from 126 up to 127th Street. And they were doing it in rhythm. They were coming down the street saying, and it's 187 on an undercover cop. And I said, whoa.
Oh,
And
that's
I
real.
watched it. I watched the Bloods come to New York, the Crips, when they were previously unknown. And so,
Speaking of unknown,
yes.
unfortunately, we're getting towards the tail end of this segment.
no, I got
And-
a question
okay.
too.
Oh, okay.
I
So
got a question.
I was going to
Okay,
ask and
okay,
make sure
yeah.
before
All right.
you stop
Yes.
to let people know how they can find out more about
Okay,
you.
sure.
Give us that math so they can reach you
Right.
and let us know what you
All
got
right.
coming up.
Please feel free to join me on Facebook, Twitter. Facebook is Conrad Bennett Tillard, Conrad Tillard at Twitter. And every Tuesday at 6 o'clock, I'm on WHCR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem.
So this is my thing. A lot of younger people, and I was the same way. Us growing up in the struggle, there was always somebody that made us want to do something, and I think that we have lost the focus of it's not the messenger, it should be the consistent message, right? And so, and we're now turning into that generation where we may even be seen as messengers.
Right.
But I know I try to tell people, let's listen, let's keep this message going. What are you doing so people don't fall into, okay, Jesse Jackson didn't win, so I'm not going to be involved any longer?
Right.
Do you think that we should be doing something to change that, to keep people engaged? Or is it okay for people just to, if they're involved, then let them be involved?
Well, I think that what I'm happy about is that there's a significant movement among young people. The Black Lives Matter movement has kind of affected people all over the country, but somewhere there's a core of young activists and young people. In politics, there's always young people. I mean, I was looking at the city council the other day. There's a lot of young people who have jumped up. So I'm confident that as long as people who have a voice, who have something positive to say, continue to say it, it will affect different generations. Now, they may not always want to hear. They may say, what you're talking about is 30 and 40 years old. But the reality is, I'm convinced that it's the people that spoke to me when I was coming up,
Right.
the older people, they planted a seed in my head, and then life watered that seed. So I begin to realize some of the most influential people in our community are coaches. I mean, there are many ways that you can affect young people in a very positive way, and I'm confident that we have a lot of people that are doing that.
So stay on that topic, right? So Curtis talks about this all the time. We just are not going to the church.
Yes.
why is that? And where do you see the role of the religious institution, the pastor, the minister in our society today and in our communities, where they used to play a larger role.
Yes.
Now they're kind of dwindling.
Well, I think clergy have made.
If you agree with that,
I
don't
do
know.
agree with it.
Okay.
Clergy have made a number of mistakes. First of all, I think sometimes we as clergy are too busy following political people instead of leading them. See, if we don't feel that what we say and do is important, why should anybody else? And since ministers presumably speak from God, I mean, we don't.
It's true.
We at least tell people of what we read that God said.
Right.
We have to stand on that. And at times that is going to make us unpopular. At times that will make us out of sync with political movements. But we have to stand on that. And I think that that's what's missing. I think we're trying to figure out, well, should I wear a jersey or a suit?
Right.
Do I want
Go sleeveless.
hip hop gospel choir or tradition? All of those things are people going to always find where they want to be as far as that's concerned. But the message has to be a message of substance, a message of weight, and a message that speaks to the lives of the people. And I think that's the great challenge for ministers. But let's face it, we are becoming increasingly a secular people, which is, to me, to our detriment. You know, we had TV shows when I was coming up that talked us about going to college. Bill Cosby and the Cosby Show.
Family.
These kids today have TV shows, hip hop Atlanta. I mean, just utter nonsense. And they may always want to view it as we sought to find the garbage. It was harder to find in our days.
True.
But there has to be someone telling them this is garbage. And as a minister, I think we have to do that. We have to stand.
That's
for
the most
something.
energetic statement you said the whole interview. That's the most energy I got
feels
from
that
you.
way. But it's so true.
It's where the passion
But
is.
you gotta give it.
Because I see my people, you living in the projects, and you are following and emulating, and your whole being is focused on trying to be like somebody who's a millionaire that acts like somebody in the project. So we
crazy is that?
we are being, and so it used to be there was grandmother there, or you were in church, or even in school, you had that counterbalance, but you don't have that today. And so my greatest hope is that black people do not destroy themselves by this sort of disproportionate reliance on popular culture. Everybody enjoys popular culture, but nobody lives it like we do.
Right.
Okay?
We are the seasoning to everything.
You know, The Godfather is a good movie, but
Right.
you don't go out thinking that you're Michael Corleone, because
Right.
you're not, and he's not. So these are things that I think are very important. The last thing is, I think that the church has become too politically correct. Listen, it may be that the church is going to take, the religious community will take different positions than the academy, okay? But that only makes sense because the academy has a different, that's philosophy. The religious institutions, they speak from theology. And so that's one of the issues that I see. And I think all of us have listened to Michael Eric Dyson, Cornel West, far too much, because these are wonderful men for the academy, but they don't work in Bedford-Stuyvesant. They don't work in Harlem. They don't work in South Jamaica, Queens.
Yeah.
And a lot of that theory that they can talk about in a small classroom of 10 very bright people has disastrous consequences at August Martin or Springfield Garden or Jefferson, or, you know, so we got to be concerned about that. And that's what I'm concerned about. That's my passion.
Love that.
All right, well, I guess I have one last question
Sure.
then. Based on your DNA, based on how you're built, based on all the things that went into making you who you are, I need you to give me 3 MCs that reflect the aesthetics that you could appreciate.
Well,
He thought you was going to escape. Wow.
no, that's easy because I came up in the greatest period of hip hop.
I agree.
Going
Okay.
back to the very beginning, okay?
Okay.
I remember when Spoonie G worked at the corner store on 43rd Street near my cousins on 44th and 10th.
Shout to Pumpkin.
But let me say this.
What's up?
My greatest, wow. I mean, I'm just going to be honest.
Okay,
Well,
please.
okay. Tupac, okay?
Okay.
Is number one because of the content and the passion.
Sure.
Okay. Tip, number two. All right.
Wait. When you say Tip, you mean Tip from Tribe Called Quest or Q-Tip?
right.
Q-Tip.
All right, well, you know.
Tip from Tribe Called
Yeah, you gotta say that.
Yeah, you do.
know?
You do. Because I was wondering.
When he said Tip, I was like,
wondering.
oh, T.I.? What?
That's what I
No,
said,
no,
too.
yeah, that's right. No.
T.I. got some
no,
work.
No,
Right,
no.
right.
Not, and then, of course,
Y'all funny.
I mean, in terms of just
Say-
total body of work, which is not that broad but very profound. Lauren, I mean,
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
I thought he was going with the guard, but that's all
there's
right.
I love Nas. I mean, I love Rakim.
Yeah.
I know all these brothers. I love them. Pete Rock, CL Smooth. I mean,
Right.
there are a lot, but those are the ones that
Ain't
I
nobody
That's
mad
what's
at you
up.
for
Those
that.
are the ones
for
I
the-
ride
yeah,
around listening to.
Nobody mad at you with that one.
Yeah, yeah.
Who said I ride around
All right.
listening to?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it was a pleasure.
Very nice.
You
to
know,
talk.
it was
You got a
nice.
lot of- you packaged that in.
He got it bottled. He got it bottled.
Good to see you. Thank you, my sister.
Oh, you're awesome.
God bless. Okay.
It was a pleasure to have you,
So
sir.
let us know the latest sermon.
And we'll keep you
Let us
posted.
know, and we'll definitely
We'll
make
keep-
sure we
We'll
share.
keep you posted.
Awesome.
All right, party people. We'll be right back. Queen Dream, drop it like it's hot, baby.
Let's get
Tell 'em nerd.